loft, and unfortunately things didn't go as well as I'd hoped. We only have 10 birds, so that means we've lost 15 birds of original 25 birds on this training toss. And it's actually August 8th now, so I've been waiting 3 days to see if any more birds would show up. And unfortunately we only have 10 still. So that's about a 40% return, unfortunately. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why this happened. I was advised by people much more experienced not to take my birds to Maui. And the only thing I can think of is when we release birds in Hawaii on a new island, you know, one theory of mine might be that the birds actually fly around the island. So when you're talking about a smaller island like Molokai, maybe it's not so much of a problem. They can fly around that island once or twice and still have the energy to make that decision to cross the channel to Oahu. But when you talk about Maui, which is a much larger island, to fly around that island even once, I'm pretty sure the birds will be a little tired after that, and maybe they don't want to cross a new channel that they haven't crossed before, despite the fact that the channel between Maui and Molokai is so short. Well, to help the birds, I did release them from the west shoreline of Maui, and I was hoping that they would be able to identify Molokai across that channel because it's a short distance. I don't know if that happened or not. One other theory I had is that, you know, from Maui they can see Molokai and Lanai. I don't know if they make the distinction between Molokai and Lanai. Maybe they flew to Lanai. I don't know. I really think though that if the birds didn't make it back, it's because they're still on Maui. I believe if they made it to Molokai, since they had made that crossing from Molokai to Oahu 3 times, I believe they would have made that crossing even if it was the second day. That being said, do I regret taking my birds to Maui for a training toss on their own? Yeah, I do. And to be honest, the only reason why I took them to Maui is because the first race is from Maui, and that race date is coming up in 11 days now, August 19th. And, you know, even if I had waited to the race, August 19th, to send the birds, you know, some might say that the other, you know, having a larger flock would bring the birds over the channel. I don't know, there's no way to really tell that in hindsight, you know. I can't compare that now. Even if you had, I mean, I don't think you'd be able to compare that because, well, you just couldn't, because say you had a flock of birds like mine and you sent it before you sent it with the rest of the clubs, you know, before the first race. Well, the birds you lost, you cannot get them back, and you cannot, you know, pretend like they never made that attempt and put them in the race and see what would happen. And vice versa, if you raced them first, you know, either that birds came back or not. If they did come back, now they have the knowledge of making that crossing, and if you were to fly them on their own without the rest of the club, you know, those birds have an advantage because they made that crossing already. So they have that knowledge. That being said, that was kind of my philosophy why I really wanted to take the birds to Maui, is because I wanted them to have that knowledge, not because I wanted them to have that exercise or I thought they couldn't make it. I know they can make it. I mean, it's only going to take them less than 5 minutes to make the crossing from Maui to Molokai, so an extra 5 minutes is nothing in terms of making that flight back to Oahu. But, you know, that's how the young bird season is. Unfortunately, you know, the birds have to be born this year, or at least they have to be banded this year. So you have a limited time to get them through the molt, if you're trying to speed up the molt. And then you have a limited time to train them. In this case, with this loft of birds this year, this young bird season, I thought it was going much better. Maybe it still is going much better. I don't know. The season hasn't, well, the racing season hasn't started yet. So they went to Molokai 3 times so far before this Maui release. And even before that, I did take them out on a boat a few miles off Oahu towards the direction of Molokai, just to get them used to flying over the water, or at least starting to get used to flying over water. So I believe that helped. And then I did release them. So far these birds have only trained with themselves, not with any other clubs. And I did release them from the west shoreline of Molokai, so the closest shoreline to Oahu. That being said, when I released them that day, they just flew north-south until I couldn't see them anymore. So by the time I got home, I don't know, I mean, most of them were back, but I don't know how long it took them. And I don't know if that even helped. But anyway, the next release from Molokai was from about midway through the island, on the north side of the island, a town called Kalapapa. And they did well that day, actually. They didn't take long at all to head towards Oahu. So I thought things were going well. So the next training toss, I wanted to get them to the east side of Molokai, which is the closest shoreline to Maui, which I did. And to be honest, that day I shouldn't have released them. It was very rainy. I wasn't sure how many were going to make it back. But I released them along the east shoreline of Molokai, close to Maui. My intent is let them see the island of Maui, let them see what Molokai looks like coming from the island of Maui, releasing them on that shoreline. And it looked like they went around the north shore of Molokai back to Oahu that day. And all the birds made it back. One of the birds made it back the second day, and that was the same bird that was late the two previous times from Molokai. And that being said, oddly enough, that bird was, let's see, he was third to arrive from Maui on this toss. The bird that was doing worse was third to arrive from Maui. Granted, he was still late. It was the first day, but he was still late. But he was the third bird back out of 10 that we have, which is interesting. That being said, I believe all the birds came back by themselves. When I was at the loft waiting for them, they all came back by themselves. None of them came back in a group, which is interesting. So releasing them on the east shore of Molokai, with time running out, unfortunately, in training, I decided to take them on a nice day to Maui, and that's what we filmed on this. I really don't understand why the birds wouldn't fly to Molokai, because Molokai is so clear, because it's so close. I don't know if you can tell that in the video, but it's such an easy crossing, and especially since I took them to the west shoreline of Maui, so they could see where they were just released prior on Molokai on the east shore. That being said, it didn't happen, and we lost 15 of our birds. Well, that being said, hopefully the 10 birds we do have, for whatever reason they made it, hopefully they'll do good in the races. And I'll be honest, this season was harder to lose my birds, because I actually hand raised my birds this year. So I had hand raised pigeons in the past, and I have a few that are pet pigeons. I don't raise them. My wife and I raise them, and they're very tame, and they'll seek out our attention. So my philosophy this year, and again, I'm a new racer, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, was I wanted to try and attempt to hand raise birds. So maybe a motivation factor would be not only returning to the loft, returning to the mate, returning to a nest, whatever it be, food, whatever. Another motivation would be maybe they want to return to us. So I did hand raise all of these birds this year, all 25 from about 7 days old. So I let the birds be raised by their parents for about 7 days, so they could get all the antibodies from the crop milk. But after that, I hand raised all of them. And to be honest, I noticed a difference. They were definitely more tame than the birds last year. That being said, I didn't spend a lot of time with the birds last year when they were in the nest. Maybe if I handled them a little bit more while they were in the nest, maybe it would have been the same as the birds this year. But the birds were definitely more tame this year. I definitely trained them a lot more this year. Last year, I was on the mainland for business. So last year, they only went to Molokai once before the first race, which is less than ideal. I think I had about 25 to 30 birds last year. I would have to look at the records. But after returning from the Molokai toss, which was with other groups, with other clubs, the training toss for Molokai last year, I think I only had 7 birds. So I lost more birds that first training toss last year from Molokai than I lost from this training toss from Maui this year. So I can definitely say that I did a better job this year. At least I feel I did, and that's saying a lot, because in pigeon racing, the more I think about it, the handler has a lot to do with it. I mean, that being said, I haven't had much success in racing, so I don't know if that next determining factor would be a quality bird, which I'm sure it is. But to even stand a chance, the handler has to do his job, and that's what I'm learning, and that's what you learn as a new fancier, I believe. So this being my second season, I believe I'm making less mistakes, especially in terms of encouraging the molt this year and getting them to a point where they're ready to start training long distance. So it's all a learning curve. Do I regret this last training toss in Maui? Right now I do. I don't want to lose any of my birds, but it happens to everybody racing here, especially in Hawaii. I don't know, I don't have any experience flying elsewhere, but the way I see it and how the birds just don't like to cross over the ocean, I suspect that there's their own challenges flying in Hawaii. But it is what it is. This is where we live, and the birds that will make that crossing, they're the ones that you breed from, because they're the ones that are back in your loft. So hopefully we breed into our pigeons here in Hawaii a characteristic where they're more willing to cross water over the ocean, and really that's probably the only outcome. But despite the fact I didn't even want to finish this video, but the more I thought about it, better or worse, you're not going to have a perfect season. I am new to this sport, and the experiences that I've had so far, mistakes that I've had, maybe others can learn from that are getting into the hobby, or at least know that they're not the only ones having difficulty starting in this hobby or in this sport. So if you're new to the sport, all I can tell you is hang in there. Each season you're going to learn, like I'm learning, and just try and enjoy your pigeons. Don't stress out about it too much. Yeah, I don't want to lose my birds, but you do what you can, and that's all you can ask. So until next time, this is Sean at Aloha Pigeons. Hopefully I have good news for you. August 19th is going to be our first race, and hopefully I'll be able to film that, or at least I'll be able to film the returns. Aloha.